Okay, hello, my rationals. This is our first podcast ever. I'm so excited. I hope you guys are excited as I am because we are really, really excited. Well, this is for the Gen 1304 class Peoples and Society in today's. And your hostess will be myself, Antar Figueroa. I'm recording from Calgary, Alberta, April 21st. And that is
Michael.
Michael.
Michael Antar is in June. He's already living in summer. And then I'm Michael. I'm in Calgary. Today is April 21st. I'm buzzing to be recording this and sharing my experience.
Yeah, and I'm Nate. I'm the final member of this group, and I'm actually shaking it up. I'm from Kelowna, BC, so I'm actually there right now, just with all the events going on in the world. Just thankful that we're able to still record in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're going to talk in this podcast a little bit about the Cluster 3 Goal 8, which is understanding debates about equality of life in society. And there was this huge thing that happened in this class and the Gen 1304 guys, which was positionality, right?
Yeah.
It was a huge thing that happened in this class, and I believe that is one of the biggest thing that remark about this class. You guys want to talk a little bit about it? You want to go first, Michael?
Yeah. Honestly, like my positionality was at first hard to understand, but essentially I've understood myself to be this heterosexual 23-year-old guy. I came from the Middle East. I used to live in the Middle East. I came here in ninth grade. And so as I was growing up, I started kind of taking traits from here and adding them to my already established kind of roots and traits. And so I see myself as a mixture between, between like the Canadian lifestyle and like the Arabic lifestyle. Definitely closer to the Arabic lifestyle and than to the Canadian. But yeah, essentially as a heterosexual, cisgendered, white passing male at times, I definitely have a lot of privileges, and this class made me recognize these privileges and understand that I've had life on the easy mode, whereas a lot of people around me did not have that.
I definitely relate to that too. Just privilege. This class has definitely exposed that to me. I mean, I was born in Canada, born in Edmonton, Alberta, and have lived here for my whole life. I have German and heritage roots, but I'm a 19-year-old cisgender white male. And so I distinctly remember in this class just looking through the textbook, and when it listed the dominant groups in society, I found myself in most, if not all, of the dominant groups. And so one of the big things this class has shown me is just like the privilege I have in this society that many people don't, that I take for granted, didn't even realize. And in addition to that, I mean, one of the foundational things in my life is I'm a Christian. So the church has a big influence in my life. And for me, it's tough. I see Christians using the Bible to justify hatred, oppression, injustices in our society. And that's just so false, because we're called to love our neighbors as ourselves. And this class has really shown me that if I want to truly live that out and love your neighbor as yourself, I have to be a socially conscious human being. And I have to see and understand the inequalities in our society, just because from my position of privilege, I haven't experienced those. And so this class has really broadened my understanding of our society and just the issues within it.
Yeah, and I just want to add that I really like that phrase from the Bible that says, love your neighbor as if to yourself. And just because you're different, it doesn't mean like you need to love everyone else around you and treat them well.
Definitely. That is actually very interesting, because there's a big discrimination inside religion, I believe, to a certain degree. In some points, it's kind of hierarchical, and it's crazy that the Bible says that, but there are some churches that are really, really against, like, for example, gay people, such as the Byzantinians, I believe they are, and all that kind of things. Well, I really want to talk a little bit about my positionality, which I resonate with you guys as well. The privilege is definitely the thing that changed me the most in this class. It's crazy to see it. I'm a Mexican person. I was born in the States as well, so I am a Mexican American. And there's this thing that we really hate to talk about in my family, but it's the amount of money where we stand there in that social stratosphere of Mexico, which is a very classist country. I never wanted to see it because I'm kind of against neoliberalism and capitalism at all times, but probably that's one of the things why I think the way I think, which is I can see the things the way I see them, because I had the chance to have this kind of education, and it is all due to the money. And that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate that money really dictates how you're gonna think and how you're gonna be and how many opportunities you're gonna have. But at the end of the day, that's the world that we live in, and that's the neoliberalism that we live in. But again, that is a big part of the mental shift that we got in this class, but really it's not all of it. I'm pretty sure you guys had many other things that changed you and that kind of bent your mind all over the place. Nate, you want to talk a little bit about it? I know you had some health issues.
Yeah. I kind of touched on it already, but I just did not realize the hierarchy that exists within our society. Just whether that be class, income, money-based, or even just the racial hierarchy. And one of the points of research I made was looking into the healthcare institutions in North America and just realizing that systemic racism is built into all levels of it, the micro, meso, and macro. And this is just due to white people being in positions of power, and then their decisions are being made from a pro-white viewpoint. And it's hard for me to recognize because all of this benefits me. And yet you just don't realize the inequalities this leads to. And it's easy to say, oh, it's just the people in power. But no, it occurs at all levels. So even just the subtle things, the little things, the unconscious biases, which has been one of the biggest realizations for me, is just that I don't realize the subconscious biases I hold, and just whether that be the stereotypes or just little things that I don't even recognize, but they contribute to the hostile environment, the inequalities, and the exclusion that many minority groups are facing. And this class has shown me that personally, I have to be willing to change and recognize these biases I hold. And just along with my lack of awareness of the injustices in the society, it just shows that I'm contributing to the melting pot. And I even saw that here in the Canadian healthcare system, which is just a part of the dominant, westernized clinical approach to health that leaves non-traditional kind of indigenous views of health as mystical, disregarded, not even looked at. And again, it's just trying to throw people into the melting pot, which ultimately leads to indigenous people being overlooked and being their health suffering as a result of that, their quality of life.
Yeah, and not just that, but I really want to resonate that leads to a cultural genocide as well, as we already talked about, as what happened with the schools. I'm sorry, can you guys remember me the schools that they used to send indigenous people to?
Residential schools?
Residential schools, exactly, which was basically a genocide of culture, which I believe is as hard of a crime as the health issues that are going on right now. Michael, sorry.
Yeah, no. Thank you for adding that. That's a really good point to resonate to. And I just wanted to add when I was doing some readings for this class, I came across the Aamjiwnaang Nation in Sarnia, Ontario, and the reserve was treated like it was a dumpster for chemicals. Factories nearby were just dumping their waste in there, and that was affecting the health of the current residents. Not just that, it was affecting the health of newborn babies that were born with defects. But what shook me was that there were literally no like actual actions taken from that. There's media didn't react that much. There's no kind of response to these governments and factories, despite several complaints and the community speaking that this is damaging them. And like, come on, like living at your own house. Imagine like living at your own house and someone keeps on dumping chemicals in your backyard, for example, and just ruining your life. And don't forget that a lot of communities have that land connection too. So it just kind of adds more insult to the injury, really. And like having like residence is essentially where you live. It's a foundational elementary right that it shouldn't even be up for argument, right? And the fact that these atrocities, an example of that, is kind of overlooked. And this is just one small example, right? Like we're restricted on time here. I could go on to a several list of list, and yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate the way the social stratification is right now, because really the dominant culture, which is nowadays the male, white, cisgender person, probably Christian as well in this part of the hemisphere. Um, it really takes a lot from the other cultures, and they make them. It makes very injustice, a lot of injustice in this world. So I want to talk a little bit about my mental shift, which it really comes from the same thing, the social stratification, but it's more like towards the media and towards like the pop culture and how it is made, that I feel like it throws you to a certain stereotype that we're living. And this stereotype is the same thing that we talked about in the dangers of a single story. And I think that is really, really important to note, because a lot of people and a lot of nations and a lot of um, a lot of people is living in other countries, and that we have no identification with their culture because no one is showing us that. The media does not want to show us that. And I want to give the example of Pocahontas that we had in class, which I think is huge. Disney really doesn't care about the culture of anyone else. They just take that culture to monetize it and to make as much money as they can. So these guys just took Pocahontas and they were like, yeah,
turned into a love story.
Exactly, turned into a love story when it actually is a colonist, which is the worst thing that has ever happened in society, having a relationship with a children that was actually stolen, and they are basically raping this person. So that is terrible, and that is really, really sad about the way that our media is. And Disney is such a monster in the media, which is huge, right?
And it's normalized at one point, like it's normalized and it keeps passed on, like, oh, it's a love story, and people actually believe it and they buy into it.
Exactly. And sorry, Nate.
I think it's so much just the intersectionality too that's built into our society, just how people are treated differently based on different races and stuff. And it's just the whole hierarchy in our society. I know Antar has talked about the intersectionality before.
Definitely. Yeah, the intersectionality, I think, is a huge thing. It's brought by Crenshaw, and it basically is how individually everybody is going to experience a different discrimination. If you are a black male or a black female, or if you're a white female and a black female, it's going to be very different the way you are going to experience the way socialization is in this world, and basically in the Western Hemisphere right now that we are studying. And I think that is a very, very huge thing, because there are all these unconscious biases that we really are not taking in consideration at any time. But as already Nate explained that, I think that media is actually feeding us with all this. But now, what can we do about it? I am pretty sure you guys have always talked about the education and how important it is. And I agree with you. You guys want to talk a little bit about the education?
Yeah. I think that's a really important point to consider, and it's that pop culture has a huge influence, right? Like we started listening to hip hop culture, which rappers and singers and artists will do it because of money and because that's what people listen to. But the issue becomes when you integrate that as a lifestyle and start applying it to people around you, and then people around you, it's contagious. You see someone doing that, you're going to start copying them, right? And I think the issue with that is that they paint life to you to be in a certain way. It's all about as a guy, it's all about being hard, it's all about money and supermodels and what so's, and that's just far-fetched away from reality. It's not even connected to reality at all. And I think key issues in kind of getting rid of that subconscious bias, or these, because a lot of this subconscious bias will also come from hip hop and pop culture and stuff like that. Not just strictly hip hop, but it's the fact that you see people, and over years you kind of normalize and take subconscious biases. And I think the key to tackle that is just education, and ideologies and personalities are formed at a really young age, right? So when you're growing up, for example, when I was growing up one day, my mom was driving me around, someone cut her off. I said, he's Eastern Indian, that's why he cut you off. She put me in my place. And we need more people like that to see, if you see a kid, you hear a kid do something wrong, you need to correct them. But most importantly, what are the K-6 curriculum, that's the new one that's put in Alberta, right? these curriculums must emphasize on being correct, because these are going to shape the generations for the future kind of people, right? And yeah, I was actually looking at the Alberta education, the new one. Definitely don't give any recognition to Indigenous people, not as much as they probably cover on them very briefly. They just scratch the surface essentially, and it's crazy. This is the least that we can do. Just give recognition, know who was before us on this land, and just not, because if you go back to the high school I came from, man, like Indigenous people were essentially just associated with those like drunk people that you see on the train. And it's crazy that a lot of people just keep thinking that way even after they leave high school. Never opened a book. It's just normalized by the society, and a lot of people around them talk about that. So
you just see how the education system is missing out on their opportunity they have to really create change and fight these inequalities, because education is the thing that fights ignorance. And I realized in my life, ignorance was the thing that allowed these unconscious biases, these little kind of comments you make. It's how we've been socialized to think. And education is the way that we can really, really fight that ignorance. And you just see this total movement towards anti-intellectual. And it's just, you don't look about the history of the inequalities. You don't look about the history of our land, the Indigenous people. You just have these, how our world shapes your mind, the dominant culture just shape your perspectives rather than actually being educated on the system.
I completely agree. And I like what you said right there about the anti-intellectual movement of academics that they are pulling off right now. I mean, I'm talking about Jason Kenney trying to do this with Alberta's curriculum against basically Indigenous studies, which I think it's terrible, and that is going to take a lot away from that communities. And yeah, I completely agree with you guys. The education is really, really important. And I just want to resonate a little bit about what we have to do with our little story about my family. Well, in my family, we really never used to talk about politics or any of that. We really wanted to ignore it and just be happy with the privileges that we had. But then me and my brother started talking about 2 or 3 years ago, every single time about politics. At first, my parents were not agree with this. They didn't really want to get into the discussion. But then we just kept talking about it at all times, even when they got like mad or anything. And I understand that happens with some of my friends as well. But I think it's really important to talk about it. And I understand that you're going to annoy a lot of people when you keep talking about this stuff, but it's important to do it, because if you don't, who else is going to do it, right? Yeah. We have the knowledge.
So I just want to say that changing on the larger scale happens on an individual level. Start on an individual level.
It's what allows us to take action and fight and create the change that we're wanting to see, that this class is aiming to show us the positive, effective, sustainable change. It has to start in our own lives to take that action.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, definitely. And that's exactly where I wanted to go. Let's just take actions inside our lives and inside our communities. The people that is closer to you, even though that it looks like a small step, it is a huge step in my opinion, because we all touch so many people in our lives, and we all talk and interact with so many people, and that are the kind of things that can really change and resonate in someone on making a better society and a more justice world. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time. These were the Rationals. It was fantastic having you, the first and last podcast of us. It was fantastic, guys, to having you. That was Michael.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That was Nate. And this is myself, and we are out.